Lived experience, my education in the American South. People love to say the American South lags behind the rest of the world in education. Maybe in test scores, sure, but if you want to understand history outside of dates and treaties and inside the weight of real human error, my schools in Socastee, South Carolina, always had diverse student bodies and equally diverse faculties. Because of this, nobody avoided the hard parts of the American story, and nobody pretended we were the first ones to wrestle with the evils of our shared past. Yes, shared past, because the story of the American South is one part of the complicated story of the United States. In 5th grade, our class took a trip to Charleston, and we walked the grounds of old plantations. At one stop, our teachers made us stand inside the sweltering slave quarters at noon in April. 2 or 3 minutes felt like a lifetime. The humidity felt like a physical object, crushing the chest, flooding the lungs. It was horrific, and most of us emerged thinking, thank God it's over. For thousands of people, though, that was their life. That was what their children were born into. And that was where they died. In pedagogy, this kind of experience is called embodied learning. And embodied learning is the best way to reinforce lessons. The physical proximity, the forced stillness, and the relief afterward told us more than any textbook could. We were kids, but we got it, because how could we not? We also had human faces to go with that terror and discomfort, people to associate with the horror. Our teachers had been laying the groundwork for that lesson since the beginning of the year. We had watched Glory on a hot September afternoon, in a portable with a wonky air conditioner. My mom, an unaffiliated classroom aide, suggested it, and the teacher, a soft-spoken woman named Jolly Dale, her bona fide birth name, got permission. They both thought we were ready for it, and it turns out that we were. With the heat already making us fidgety, we watched that whole brutal film. 5th graders. And none of us flinched away. Denzel Washington, my mom's most persistent crush, Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, and Cary Elwes gave the performances of their lives, but it wasn't about the actors. It was about understanding what happened when necessity gave way to dignity, when valor didn't guarantee survival, and when the country was still deciding if black men were men. The world knew they were, knew they had hearts and minds, knew they were vital and alive, but it was a truth they denied for the sickest kind of convenience. By 8th grade, I'd gotten bolder, and I convinced my teacher to let us watch Gettysburg. Not because I thought it would be fun, but because I remembered a specific scene. Richard Jordan played General Louis Armistead, and in one scene he walks the firing line, talking quietly with a British military officer. The officer lauds Armistead on coming from a distinguished line, descended from a man who was at Fort McHenry, where the Star-Spangled Banner was penned. But Armistead doesn't want to hear about his distinguished ancestors, insisting that he is a Virginian just like the rest of his men. He points to one of the men and says, "That colonel behind me is the great-grandson of the Virginian Patrick Henry, who said to your King George, 'Give me liberty or give me death.'" And then he adds, "You may tell them when you return to your country that all Virginia was here this day." That line stuck with me because Patrick Henry died for the cause of liberty, which is an ideal that transcends race or gender. Then the following dialogue introduces complexity that may or may not have been intentional. Virginians were on both sides of the battlefield that day, and while we see one cause as being virtuous and the other as being vile, what Armistead points out is that individuals do not fight for leaders, they fight for what they believe is right. And in this country, despite our fights and fluctuations, we are able to do that, largely because we are different people, from different ethnic, cultural, and personal histories. Our balance needs to be maintained more cautiously than the balance of the often homogeneous nations that point to our flaws. This isn't beside the point, it is the whole damn thesis. The world judges the American South because of its flaws, but when you grow up here, when you feel the history, you start to understand that American differences are perceived and reinforced, rather than actually being true. I've been to the cookout, the Greek festival, the St. Patrick's Day parade, the Islamic appreciation event. I used to shop at the Asian market and eat lunch at the Mexican cantina, both a block from my school. Anytime the differences between blacks, whites, Asians, Mexicans were called out, sometimes horribly, It was because some kid was reflecting what he was taught at home, from a parent raised in an older generation. But in the South, you see the generational repair. One generation becomes more tolerant than the other, until you get schools like mine, all different kinds operating in relative peace. Yeah, we might trail other countries in math and score low on science, but don't tell me we don't know our history. Some of us were taught to feel it. I was, and I never stopped carrying that knowledge.